Great, thank you. Great, it's up. Whoa. Radiation emitted by wireless devices is a type of electromagnetic radiation, also known as EMF or EMR. Now, there's ionizing forms, such as gamma rays and X-rays, and everyone knows that stuff is really bad. Then there's non-ionizing EMF with much less energy. Until the mid-1800s, the only type of non-ionizing EMF that humans were exposed to came from the sun and lightning, as well as the Earth's own magnetic field. Then came the light bulb. Then came a grid to power the light bulb and all the other appliances enabled by this new grid. Then we learned we could send signals wirelessly with this type of radiation. That led to radio, radar, television, transmission towers, computers, infrared remotes, cell phones, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth. The number of technologies that emit EMF has exploded. And increasingly, everything in our lives emits this type of radiation, even kitty litter boxes, like the Taleo, which is Wi-Fi enabled to track your cat's health. Because it's invisible, it can be hard to appreciate how much EMF surrounds us. But it's important to realize that children today are growing up in a sea of radiation that is orders of magnitude greater than when we grew up, and that didn't exist at all when our grandparents or great-grandparents grew up. And that's one of the reasons that artist Nicolay Lamb created a series of images visualizing this type of radiation. Here we see his rendering of cell phone radiation in Manhattan. And keep in mind, this is just one type of EMF. Cell phone doesn't consider Wi-Fi or power lines or anything else. We really are residing in a sea of this stuff 24/7, and the sea is getting bigger every year. Now, increasingly, people are concerned about cancer from this type of radiation, and certainly that is a concern. Fewer people are aware that this type of radiation can damage and mutate your DNA, as Dr. Henry Lai, pictured here, along with Dr. Narendra Singh, first demonstrated in the 1990s. And they showed that even brief exposures to radiation from cordless phones can damage and mutate DNA, so-called strand breaks, where the information stored by your DNA is corrupted. In the 2 decades since, many scientists have replicated results like these. So we know that this type of radiation can damage DNA, sometimes irreparably. Now, while this type of radiation can damage DNA in any cell in your body, sperm are even more vulnerable, in part because sperm lack the ability to repair damaged DNA. The BioInitiative report is a survey of thousands of peer-reviewed studies on the health effects of EMF. Amongst their conclusions written in 2012, they state, there is a veritable flood of new studies reporting sperm damage in humans and animals. Exposure levels are similar to those resulting from wearing a cell phone on the belt or in the pocket. And so perhaps it should be no surprise that sperm counts worldwide have declined by half in the last 50 years, and most of that decline has happened in the past 10 years, in the same time period when cell phones have become ubiquitous. Infertility, while a significant concern, is not the only type of damage that can happen from these types of exposures. Even if this type of radiation does not make you infertile, it can still result in a notable increase in abnormal sperm, which can contain mutated genetic information that you can then pass on to your children. A 2012 study conducted in Iceland, published in the journal Nature, demonstrated that the number of mutations like these correlate with the incidence of conditions like schizophrenia and autism in the offspring. And this was not the first study to show results like these. People often assume that when products are made available for sale, they are safe. But as shown by the tragedy of thalidomide, just one of many thousands of examples I could cite, that's simply not the case. In fact, as scientists like Dr. Leif Salford explain, the wireless industry represents the largest biological experiment ever. We can test in the lab, draw certain conclusions about effects, make educated guesses about others, but it's simply impossible to test the effect on the entire human genome in a lab. We just don't know what's going to happen. Now, all tools change the path of our evolution. But generally, this is understood to mean natural selection, where different skills and traits lead to certain advantages in different individuals, leading them to live longer, and reproduce more. And clearly, modern technology is impacting humanity in these traditional sense of natural selection. But what I'm talking about here is something else. Literally, the scrambling of our genes, and at the level of the species, uncontrolled mutation of the genome. Of course, our society and economy relies on this wireless experiment in order to function. It's impossible to imagine a world today without Wi-Fi and cell phones. We've become so reliant on these tools. Still, this is not the first time that society has become reliant on tools that poison them. Ancient Rome had incredibly advanced plumbing, the first society that we know of that had large-scale indoor plumbing, and it led to many social and economic advances in that culture. Unfortunately, those pipes contained lead, which many now believe created mass lead poisoning in the population, poison that came from an infrastructure the society had come to rely on. What if wireless radiation is our lead pipes? What if we're building a society completely dependent on tools that poison our DNA at every moment, even when we're asleep, we're exposed to this stuff? What if the cumulative genetic impact is real and significant and irreversible? What if we could do something about this? What if we built safer technology? What would that involve? What type of investment would be required? What trade-offs would we have to make? What if we simply used less tech less often? What if it turned out that we didn't actually need our kitty litter boxes and our thermostats to be Wi-Fi enabled? What if we could see, smell, or touch EMF? Would it make any difference if we were more aware of this radiation? What if we didn't care? We can see, smell, taste, and touch tobacco smoke. Still, it took decades to regulate, and many still smoke. Just remember, this is the human genome that we're talking about. Literally, the data that defines us as a species. What risks are we willing to take with it? And what investments and sacrifices are we willing to make in order to preserve its integrity? What if we, those of us here in this room today, could make a difference in preserving the integrity of our genome and the genetic future of humanity? Thank you.